Hey, everybody. I'm Tracy Costello. I am the executive coach for the STEM Peers Gurukool platform. And I'm excited today to record a session with all of our participants called Ask Me Anything. So it's going to be a big free for all. I do want to say, just as a preface, we've got a lot of different lectures and conversations recorded from self-assessment. How do you transition? How do you do informational interviews? How do you network? How do you build your LinkedIn profile? How do you read job ads through, and those are sort of some of the, pre-career exploration topics through job search topics like writing cover letters, resumes, prepping for interviews, negotiating. So if there's a question that you have, chances are there's a space that has a resource, and you guys have, because you've joined, you have access to all of the history and everything going forward. So this season we have 10 lectures planned. So this is a bonus session. 10 lectures planned, and among them, resumes and interviews are definitely going to be two of them. We do those 3 times a year now because we know that every group that comes in often needs those pieces. So again, we are recording, so I'm going to hit mute on a couple people really quick. If I mute you and you wanted to talk first, go ahead and open up and chime in. But our goal today is just to answer as many questions as we can. We have an hour. If I need to stay a little longer, I'll stay a little longer, and that you'll find that's common. I'll stay as long as there's questions. Can't stay forever though. So let's get started. If you don't want to ask your question out loud, go ahead and put it in chat. So I'm going to open up my chat so I see that. And then if someone else is asking a question, go ahead and put your hand up, or use some kind of emoji symbol, reaction, etc., to let me know that there's someone else who has a question. So who wants to ask the first question today? I see 2 volunteers. Okay, so Priyanka, how about you go first?
All right. Hey, so actually I'm based in Europe. Actually, I'm not based in the US.
Okay, excellent.
So my first question was, how much of this is actually tailored to transitioning from academia to industry in Europe? Because I know it's in the US, for example. I know I've heard from some of my colleagues that it's quite different. Like people stay for very long in academia there, so companies are kind of used to having or hiring people who have stayed as a postdoc for quite a long time, versus like how it is in Europe, where people stay here in academia only for a limited amount of time, because beyond that you're not allowed to stay. So I was just wondering, I wanted to get an idea about, yeah.
So knowing you're in our group makes me really mindful to talk about those differences when they pop up. And certainly as we're going through things, the biggest piece that pops into my head is, a resume in Europe is going to need a photo. A resume in the US doesn't. Like that's always the thing that's different that I don't always talk about. But what I will say, everything else that I'm talking about is very skills focused. So it's not about everything that you did, but it's the skills that you gained from everything that you did. So how do you present yourself? How do you connect with people? Those things are global focused, right? So I'm not even US versus EU. I'm thinking global. Like how would you reach out to someone? What would you say? When someone asks you, there's some pretty common interview questions. If there's some specific ones that are EU based, I'm happy to add them to the lecture. I'm happy to address them as we go. But, if someone's going to say, tell me about yourself, or in another language, subtitled, tell me about yourself, right? So if they're going to ask you the same question, the answer is the same, right? The way that you would style your question, your response to that is, you need this, I'm bringing you this skill set, right? So you're focused on them. You're not focused on, oh, well, let me tell you all about my research, when it's not relevant, right? So the goal of everything that I want to, work through with you guys is very high level. that you can take pieces of it and operate in that space. I do have a resume template style that is, or I shouldn't say is, it has been developed through conversations with mostly US people, but the template style is, your contact info, key skills, but it's not just bullets of skills. It's active verb plus the skill plus the experience metric or impact at that high level. And then you're going to go into the different jobs and talk about the skill-based pieces of those roles. And then, you end with education. That's very similar. If an EU resume needs those components, those Tetris in a different way, you're bright. Like, I don't need to, you're going to figure that out pretty quickly and you're going to go, oh, well, I should do this. Great, right? The goal here is to help you connect with people. So there's a STEM Peers Euro offshoot that I would encourage you to, get engaged with that group as well. But there are also many Euro STEM peers in Gurukool also who've had good experiences and have transitioned. So there's mentors in this cohort also that will help with that.
Okay.
Hopefully does that help answer the question?
Yeah.
Make you feel a little better.
I had another question as well, but I'm going to let the others go ahead and I'll ask after.
Okay. So I see one in chat. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this one. So the individual says, I had a career gap of 1 year between first and second postdocs, and then 1.5 when you transition to industry in the US. COVID plus waiting for my work permit. I did not do anything scientifically productive. How do I face this question in your industry interviews? So part of this goes to one of the ways in which I recommend that you write your resume, which is to use whole years and get rid of the months. So part of that, if you have some employment in some of those years, it may cover over those gaps, and you may then have the opportunity to choose or not choose. Sorry, I need the elixir of the day, which is coffee. So you might choose or not choose to tell those stories. That's one way to help you decide when you want to have those conversations with someone. And give you the space to make those decisions about when you want to have those conversations with someone. I will say, because of COVID, there are a lot more people with a gap in their resume, and those gaps are not deal breakers. Like, I don't want to say they were complete deal breakers in the past, but they were viewed less favorably than they are today. So there's less stigma with having a gap in your resume. And in part because there is very low unemployment and there are a lot of roles that are open, and people are, it's a very competitive environment if people are trying to, recruit and grab people and put people into positions. The last information I saw was that unemployment for PhDs is at 0.4%. I've never seen it sub 1% until now. So I was surprised to see that, but also excited to see that. That bodes well for those who want to be employed and either are underemployed or, want to improve their space. So I understand your question. The rest of what I would ask, though, is, while you weren't doing something scientifically productive, okay, so you didn't have a paper, you were still working. So you still were building skills. You might have learned something. You might have had a volunteer role in which you were doing something else that is skill building, that is relevant to the position that you're doing. So there's lots of different ways in which I would argue that while you feel like you were in a space and you didn't accomplish anything because there isn't a metric like a paper, magic paper. I'm going to call them magic papers, and I'll explain that if I need to. Actually, I'll say it in a minute. Or an award or a presentation or something, right? If there's not that piece, you might feel like, these are the metrics you were taught are the metrics. A singular paper is not going to get you a job, right? You don't get the publication of the journal in your mailbox and you open it up and there's a job offer. That's not how that happens. There's no paper that guarantees you're going to get hired by anybody. It just doesn't exist. That's why I call them magic papers. So when you're facing those specific questions about gap or about times in which you feel like you weren't productive, in working through your resume and those kinds of things, I want to help work with you and have the mentors who are in the platform help you realize all the skills that you have and talk about your skills. We're not talking about achievements. We're not talking about specific papers. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about the skills that underpin those things. So the technical and non-technical skills that go into your project. So technical skills, absolutely, but project management and communication is the skill underlying papers, the skill underlying presentations, the collaboration, right? Those four, so technical, collaboration, communication, and project management are pretty common big bucket skill sets that people are looking for in particular job ads that you might read. And if you write your resume and you communicate your skill set to them in those four buckets, you will get job offers. And that's the magic. It's not, oh, I have all these papers. That's not how that happens. It works in academics, but that's not
Thank you so much.
else.
Thank you so much for your
Does that give you some perspective? Does that help? Do you feel better?
Yes, it did help. Yeah, it did help because I did review some papers and edit some manuscripts that time. And yeah, I guess, yeah. And still there is time now for me to pick up some skills, as you said, in project management so that I could, because some of the job websites, they specify even the months to be added. Not just the year, but as you said, yes, in the resume I could put just the year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recommend everybody take the months off, and in part because it's extra information that by this time in your career you have years of experience. You don't have to cobble together, oh, I have 3 months here and I have 8 months there, right? Like you did when you were an undergrad or a graduate student. That's just, I mean, you're at a completely different tier of your work at this point, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And I'm not saying hide it for hiding purposes, right? I'm not saying, you're not out there to deceive them, but that's your story to tell, right? If you were off for a year because you had a kid and you had the ability to do that, great, mom or dad. If you had a year off because you were taking care of a family member or other business, great, right? If you took a year off because your prior experience burnt you out so bad that you were like, I can't go to work today. Like,
yes, that's the reason. Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? That happens. And I think there's a lot more stories like that are being vocalized now because of COVID. And so I don't want to, pandemic, horrible. Some of the things that have come out of it, Zoom, right? The improvements, I shouldn't say Zoom, I should say the improvements to Zoom, because I was using Zoom in 2019 when I started as executive coach for STEM peers. Some of the improvements that have come out of that, fantastic, right? Like I was actually thinking about opening the whiteboard and having us just have a doodle space so that we could just, paste pictures and put comments and, have something at the end of this so that we're not all just looking at faces. But, there's a lot more communication that is beyond city, beyond university, right? We're having global conversations that were they were happening, but not to the level that they're happening today. And it's, Priyanka, I guess you're probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 o'clock in the evening. Sorry, it's late.
Yeah, there's a 6-hour difference. So it's
6-hour difference. So yeah, sorry, it's dinner time for you. It's middle of the day here, but when sometimes we get people in California, and so if we do it too early, like they complain. So it's like, I don't want to get up that early. Okay, on a Saturday, I get that. So 12 o'clock seems to be our sweet spot. But, you know, sometimes we get members who are in India and, you know, have to work the time schedule and find the sweet spot for that too. So we try to do our best. So thank you for your patience with us. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. Guru Raja. I'm probably going to say a lot of names wrong today.
Yes,
That's
perfect.
how I learn.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I try.
Thank you so much.
I try. So, additional questions.
Tracy, I just had a follow-up for that
Awesome.
thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I've listened this from you before, putting the years and not the months and stuff like that. So, when the CV wise, and then I've also tried adding all the other, you know, extra stuff that I did during my break. But and a lot of these what do you call it? A lot of these jobs that I applied for looked almost tailor-made to my experience.
Okay.
But the point is, like, it doesn't even cross the first line is what I feel. Like most of the time I get like, you know, we're glad, thank you for applying, but we're not continuing with this application, or I just don't get any intimation at all. So I don't even go to the next level where I could explain like what my, you know, why I had a gap, or why, you know, I had a career break and stuff like that. So what is it that, I mean, I need to get through that first phase before I could phase and, you know, explain who I am and what I'm doing and stuff like that.
Right.
So what else do you think I could probably do to get there? I was actually briefly thinking about, I don't know if this is like a stupid thing to think, but I don't know, I was thinking like maybe I should just on the top of my resume, like below all my objectives and stuff, just tell them like, you know, hey, I took a career break for these reasons. And during that time, these are the stuff that I did. I don't know if that's kind of like, you know, not a good move to do it, but I've been thinking about that lately. So it's just like, how do I get through that first phase, you know, get into even the next interview or whatever, to kind of, you know, explain who I am. So do you have any suggestions, inputs?
Yes, I have two. And that is, so I know you've been in the session, so I know you've seen this, right? We've talked in the past about how to get through. So your goal is to get from where you are to the hiring manager who's making the decision about bringing you in for an interview. But between you and that person is the applicant tracking system, the computer, right? Who filters your resume for keywords. That's step one. So if you have the right keywords, you're going to get through that process and onto the HR person's desk. So the first thing I would want to say is, let's review your resume and make sure that you're actually matching the keywords in that job description and you've got that coverage. Okay.
Okay.
Step two is HR, right? HR is going to look at your resume, and I'm going to borrow this for a second. They're going to read the top half of the first page of your document. If you don't grab their attention in that space with skills that are relevant to that job, which is why I talked about that key skills section before when I was answering the prior question. If you can't get their attention in six seconds, they're not going to keep reading, which also means I'm going to say, let's review your resume. Let's just take a look at it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So if you get to HR and they're like, oh, you've got a bunch of bullets at the top and they're like, we need these things, check, because they're reading what you've written and they see that connection. They're going to pass you to the hiring manager who's going to review you quick and also probably select you for interview, because they're going to see the same thing in the same 6 seconds, right? They're going to go, oh, we need these 5 things. You're addressing them directly at the top. Great. Fantastic. Bring you in. Secondarily though, right? So a couple of places in which we can do, you know, edit, review, revise checks to make sure that you're saying what you need to be saying to get to that space. The other way to get to that space, so tailoring, number one. Number two is networking, because the unpublished job market is a thing, right? Your network can help you get straight to the hiring manager which means you still have to apply to the computer system, but it's like the hiring manager just reaching through and just pulling it through the entire process. So all of those checks and balances sort of come off the table because the hiring
Right.
manager is going to select you in that space. So, you know, it could be referral that pushes you to HR's desk faster. I mean, there's pieces that can happen in there, but the person who you can connect with to really understand. The other reason that I like network and the piece that sort of dovetails with that, which is informational interviews, is that the job ad only tells you this much about that job. But when you get informational interviews, right, you can get extra information that you can add to that and augment. So now you're not just talking to this piece, but you're talking to the whole thing. When it gets to, so HR, not trained in science like you, most likely, they only know what they see, right? So you have to make it really easy for them to pick out, we need these 5 things, and you're telling me that you have skills in these 5 things, convincingly telling me, okay? So your bullets, you want your resume to be pristine. When you get to the hiring manager, they are trained in science, so they're going to understand the rest of the details in there that you're giving them. But again, you still want it very, very focused on those 5 things, very high level, not your papers, not your presentations, not that kind of stuff. The details like that don't matter. The numbers matter, right? So I've written 3 papers. One was a first author. It went to, you know, journals like whatever. They need the communication skill set, right? That's what they're looking for, not the details of this particular paper was on page 4. Okay, right? That, save it, put it in LinkedIn, put it somewhere else, park it. And we'll talk about all of that. So I know that you said you've been to lectures and so you've been through some of these pieces, but I think we have an opportunity for you to, you know, work with me, work with some mentors, and take a deeper dive look at your resume and what's going out so that you can get to that space and you can, you know, have people who are sponsoring you and supporting you. So, you know, work on your resume, but also work on your network. And I think we can do that. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I haven't, I've concentrated on the application tracking system, but the other points definitely, I think I'll have to improve on. So yeah, sure.
Okay. Nope.
I'll also
You've got a
post my
whole
CV.
cohort.
Thank
You've got
you.
a whole cohort and tons of mentors in the program who have transitioned. Lots of opportunities to get advice. And, you know, and like I said, well, I haven't said, well, you've heard me say it in the past. Everybody in the program gets at least 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes with me. Everybody knows that that's always longer than that. But I want to be able to help you quick. You know, my side gig is one-on-one coaching. So, you know, if we need to go and do deeper dives and whatnot, I give everybody in Gurukool a discount. Okay. I want to make sure that you guys get the stuff that you need. And if you decide you don't want to do that, that's fine, right? I'm not going to take it personally. If there's a whole ton of mentors who have, you know, who give their time to help work through those things, you know, post it on the Facebook page, ask questions, you know, say, I've got this section I'm working on, I'm just stuck. I need some thoughts, right? I'm trying to hit these points. Does this get me to that? And you'll get some real, you'll get real-time feedback, you know, and using Facebook. So I know people don't like to use the Facebook platform, for better or for worse, that's where the group is. And, you know, make a separate profile that's, you know, you don't put any information in and it'll be okay, right? They're not gonna, nobody can track you. It's a private group. So I see extra questions. I saw 2 hands at one point, and I see Mayuri. You want to go next?
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for the session.
Yeah.
So I'm also from I'm from UK, so near Europe now. So so my question is not necessarily a directly transition question. So I'm in my I just finished 4th year of my postdoc, and I've been fortunate enough to really work in a very good environment, and I loved it. And I am still interested in academia, but at the same time, I do realize, you know, the number of people available and the number of positions available are very, disproportionate. So
yeah,
my question is in terms of, so it's not that I want to kind of decide which one I want to try, or I want to try, but is it a good idea to try both of them together? Because it's not that I'm unhappy with academic track. It's just that I want to know what are the options. And
absolutely. Right. So we do have people who shift into that space, right? If you want to stay in academics, stay in academics. I am at the same time when I was talking about that global, I want to talk about all fields. I want to talk about all careers. Everything is everything can be a positive outcome. Okay. You're the one who decides that that's a positive outcome, not me, not another mentor, not your boss, not your parents. You have to make that decision. Right. And so a lot of, and you'll see this starting next week, next Saturday. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is putting the control of your career into your hands. So the first stuff we talk about is career exploration. How do you figure out what do I want to do, right? So you've got these two things that you're trying to choose. I would recommend, having coached people and I've done this for 10 years, I would recommend to try and choose one, but realize that you're not choosing that forever, that you're choosing that for your next step. So if you chose to become faculty and you go down that path and you get hired and you're in it for 2 years and you're like, I want to do something a little bit different. Great, right? Shift, pivot, right? And so I will give you my own example. I will say first, the gold watch, 50 years working for the same place and the same career path, trajectory, whatever. We used to call them ladders. For some people ladders exist, but for most of us, it's a lattice, right? We're working and moving. My career went from graduate school to a postdoc, to a very short-term second postdoc, to a full-time job as staff at an academic institution. I left that and was a consultant in pharma for a little more than a year. And then I had a gap. I will share that since we're talking about this. And then but at the time at which I was leaving that consulting gig, because pharma had a downturn in 2011, not because, and I was the part-time consultant. I was the perfect person to redline, right? But I have a patent profiling experience. So it was a great experience. So after that, I had someone in the same month that I knew I was going to be let go. I had someone call me and start to recruit me to MD Anderson and say, hey, so I worked at MD Anderson Cancer Center. I did all my training there. If you guys have looked at my profile, you'll see all of this stuff. And so then I interviewed and it went through different rounds. The position lost funding at the academic institution. Surprise. They got regained funding. They went through the whole process again. And then I was hired in October of 2012. Actually, I was hired in September and we didn't start it until October. I don't even remember the reason anymore. But I was unemployed for 10 months. I got to stay home with my little 3-year-old. It was delightful. Like I would, I look back and I think, thank God I had that time. Like I'm so, I'm blessed. At the time I was like, oh my God, I need a job, right? But it worked out. So, find the silver linings. In the meantime, during that time, I was doing other things and I was gaining other skill sets. So that's part of why I recognize having the benefit of looking back at history and the benefit of hindsight. I can see all those pieces. So back to your question. So if you want to be in academia, that's fine, right? But I'm going to challenge you, is it faculty or is it some of the other roles that are in academics? So, is it a research staff position? So you're still doing the research, you're still writing grants, you're still writing papers, you're still doing all the work. You're just not the name on the grant. Is that it? Or is it, do you love the actual activities of grant? So grant administration or academic administration, which is what I classify myself as right now. Or is it, so I take care of all the students in the postdocs and I love it. This is my favorite, I get to do this kind of stuff. So is it science writing? Is it, what piece of it is it? And then, you know, is it lab manager, right? And that might be the thing that you enjoy. That's a little bit fingers in all the projects. You're going to do some of the work, some of the time you're going to be writing grants. You're going to be, I mean, so there's a lot of overlap with a lot of these types of positions. And so you kind of, one of the things I will challenge you in the very first session that we're going to talk through is self-assessment. What are your skills? What are your interests? And not, you know, interested because you're good at it, right? Like I want you to take those two things and separate them. So if you hate pipetting, don't. If you're really good at it, that's excellent. I'm so happy for you. But if you're really good at it and you hate it, that's not what I want you to go build your career on, right? So there's some big deep dive questions and stuff that we're going to work through. And again, you've got some people around you who are going to be able to help answer those questions. Flip side, if you decide, okay, I'm going to shift and go into academics, great, right? You know, or excuse me, out of academics into industry, great. So if you're thinking in that trajectory, we've got people who, again, you can have all these different experiences. And if there's not enough mentors in the program, every one of us, including me, has a network that gets you to another layer of network, right? And our goal is to help push you into the right spaces, get you connected to the right people, having the right conversations to be able to say, this is the thing I want to go next and go after it. Okay. This is that. I'll help. Hopefully I think, you know, I answered the question. So really it's, you know, you're in career exploration and it's okay. Embrace that, right? This is a good time. And do the things that feed your soul. I didn't know that helping, well, so actually that's not true. I knew that helping others fed my soul. But when I was doing research, it was, you know, research that drove answers that help people. So that was my, you know, my outlet. You know, now I'm in a academic administration and I'm directly working with people who are solving all of those problems, right? Great. But I'm helping them figure out where they're going to be able to do those things that are helping them do those things. So it's on multiple layers. I'm helping you. So like, again, that feeds my soul. So hopefully that's helpful. I see someone else who wrote in the chat, I'm in their final year of PhD. When is a good time to find a job? So one tier earlier than our postdoc here. But a typical job search, depending on where you're going, takes 6 to 9 months. So if you're looking at faculty positions, you really need to be looking now into the early fall for something that's going to start in the next fall, right? If you're looking at those types of jobs that align with the school year, right? Typically people start faculty, typically universities start faculty in the fall. There are, however, off-cycle hires all the time, particularly in the research arena. So, you know, you have to sort of mind that gap and understand what your particular space is. For most jobs, though, I'm going to lump them into that 6 to 9 months. If you are in a hurry, if you have a fire and you're like, yeah, I'm going to dedicate all my time to this, you can do it faster, but you're still rate limited by how many applications you can churn out, how fast the applicant tracking system is pushing those to HR, how fast HR is pushing those to hiring manager. Like you're still at the rate limiting step of how fast is the HR or hiring manager putting together the teams that are doing the interviews amongst summer where everybody's taking vacations, right? Like, you know, in Europe, actually, like there's a whole month that everybody takes off, right? So in December and November here November and December here in the United States, once you get between Thanksgiving and Christmas, stuff slows way down. So, you know, the end of the year, beginning of the new year, after about November 26th, you got a couple of good weeks in early December, but after that, like everything is really slow. So there's different spaces, different time points that some of those things happen, but also recognize that, you know, once you put yourself in the system, you know, you might apply to a job and you not hear anything. And then a month later, all of a sudden you get an invitation for an interview, just because they had so much going on. and we don't see any of that, right? All it's like, oh, well, I applied a week ago and I haven't heard anything. That must be a nothing. Maybe, maybe not. Apply to something else and you hear back the next day. So it's all over the place, and there's not really a lot of flex in there. The other way, actually, we've done the lectures on this. We've had some of these conversations, and I will throw it in here. The other way that sometimes pushes you through the process faster is if you're working with a recruiter. So having a LinkedIn profile that gets the attention of recruiters and helps you set you up in that space. But Connie, for you, being in a part of, being a part of this group, will walk through some of those pieces for you. So we'll help you think about, what do I want to do next? How do I make sure that my network is there to support me in that next step? How do I make sure that I can do informational interviews, understand, if I'm thinking 3 different things, how do I choose one? Work through those pieces, and then step into application, prep for interviews, prep for negotiating if you have one offer or if you have multiple offers, right? We'll go through all those different pieces. And from sort of what do I want to do through, negotiate that job offer is 10 things in a framework that is, again, I've tried to build it so that it's, location neutral, field neutral, level neutral. So coming out of a PhD, coming out of a postdoc, coming out of years of experience, wherever you're at in your career, you should still be able to apply these principles and take the next step, right? Because it's all about the next step. Hopefully that answers that question. Jessa Marina,
thank you.
I see a hello, but I'm going to keep. Oh, I see your question. I'm having difficulties getting industry positions due to visa. Right now, I'm approached by companies on LinkedIn, but they're not advancing as soon as they hear about visa sponsorship. So I'm thinking about transferring to my partner's dependent visa and getting an EAD. Could you shed some light on the pros and cons of doing that? Do you think there will be better chances of getting an industry job if I'm a dependent with an EAD? That's a tough question. So I know some things about visa. I don't have all the answers for visa. I wish I did. I'm not a visa immigration attorney, and I've never had that training. I have people who I know who I could give you advice in that space. This is a question that I would post in the platform, in the private, in our small group, right? There are 500 to be fair, but this is a group that this is a question that I would share there. And if you want to know the question of which one's better, right? Because you'll hear other people's experiences and you'll be able to judge for yourself which one you think is going to be better. Again, it's you having to make that decision, right? What I will say though is there are other ways, and it depends on how you have the conversation with the different individuals to say, I need you to sponsor my visa. There's at least one individual in the Gurukool group that I would highly recommend you talk to, who I worked with, and she transitioned from an academic institution. So she was J and then H briefly before transitioning to an O1. And a lot of companies are hiring with the O1 visa right now because H has the limitations for industry of a cap, but O1s don't. So there's a lot of push for that. There's an O1 support group, so help you through the entire process of that if that's what you decide to do. If you shift to your partner's dependent visa, I'm not sure if that's a J2 or if you're talking about H4. Again, I thought H4s. Oh, J2. So, if you think that that's, I would talk with some others who have had that experience.
Yeah, I have actually talked to some of them. Talked to some of them, and
what's your sense of hearing from that?
Yeah, so it's like a mixed feeling I have, because the main problem is everything will be connected to my partner's visa for me, which is something that is bothering me. Otherwise, the options for getting the industry job is way higher, because that I have heard from other people, that their chances of getting the job is higher. The problem is that everything will be connected. So that's why I'm still thinking, like, I wanted to hear if you know some things. That's why I asked that if you have anything.
So in this case, if you wanted to really truly keep it and stay separate, I would look at that 01 and
Yeah,
you
they are
know,
not, they're actually, whoever has talked to me in industries, they have reached out to me on LinkedIn. The moment I have asked about visa, and they say, no, there is no sponsorship, I'm sorry. So
Okay.
the one also, they are not willing. That's why.
Okay. So having people reach out to you is not a productive route right now, right? So we want to turn that around and have you be proactive in choosing who you want to work with. There is a website that so the gal who went through the process, I'll share, because her if you go search Gurukool, you're going to find it, is Janani Kumar, and she is at Molecular Templates right now. She has an 01. She went that route. And her transition story is on Gurukool. So like, I mean, if you did a little searching, you'd be able to figure out who I was talking about. So I'm gonna out her, and hopefully she'll be fine. Actually, I have other exciting news from her today. She messaged me right before the session. So good news all around for her, and I'm excited to see that. But you know, as you're thinking about your options, right, they're your options. So there is a website called myvisajobs.com. And what it shows is the companies and their patterns of H1 sponsorship. So for you, it might be a smart tactic to look at who is, you know, if you're looking at jobs and you're like, oh, this one looks great, this one looks great. Take that information, look back at the companies through that database and say, oh, well, this one, I'm going to apply to both, because both of them look like they might sponsor, but I'm probably going to have a better chance with this one, right? Or versus the other, because there's a higher percentage, or, you know, whatever the data and statistics show you in that space. And, you know, so I will say bigger companies have bigger legal teams, have bigger opportunities, make it easier, right? If you try to work for a startup, that's going to be really hard. Because they're not going to have any clue what Visa means. And I mean, they think Visa is their credit card in their wallet. And I don't mean that. And there are plenty of Americans who are clueless. And sorry about that. You know, and again, we're talking about HR, right? We're talking about the recruiters who don't have science training. They've never done, they don't understand, you know, if you start to tell them too far down into your project, oh, I'm working on this little molecule in this part of the DNA, they're gonna right over their head. So, you know, if they're finding your profile, then there's something in there that's attractive. And if you package that and submit it to the companies that you know are going to be receptive to you as a candidate, you're going to have higher probabilities. So let's focus there. If you chose to go J2, okay, right? We're still packaging your stuff. We're still making you an attractive candidate, and you're still hopefully going to get more offers. You know, one way or the other, part of it is you and how you're presenting yourself. And clearly you're doing something right on LinkedIn. So let's start with that and just push that forward into a good space. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I realized that you DM'd me and didn't put it into chat. I totally outed. This is no one sees this except in our group. So it's
no problem.
Okay. So there's a next question here I see, and then I see Priyanka has, so let me answer one more, and then Priyanka, I'll get back to you. 2 questions for application process. So number 1, the job description is interesting, but the requirement is only master's. Is the job worth applying for? Question. So I will answer that in pieces. So the answer is yes, maybe. Is it the right title? Is there a more senior title that you should be going for? You might do a different job search, right? You might refine your search to the right job titles. But I will also say that's really hard, because some institutions, some organizations, companies, let's say you're looking at scientist. So At one company, scientist is a master's level job. At another company, scientist and senior scientist at that company is the PhD level. At another company, scientist is the PhD level, because no company can agree on what they should call people, and everybody's HRs are different, and there's probably 18,000 different titles for all the same thing. Sorry about that. Even in the US, there's 37 different titles for what is a postdoc. We maybe need 5. We don't need 37, right? So that's a problem, right? But you know, at some universities, they call them research associates, and at other universities, the research associates are the graduate students. So, you know, that's a mess, and it makes it really hard to, you know, when you're searching, I want a scientist role. Okay, you're going to get everything across the board. One thing to think about when you're applying for this, and this is why I say maybe, in your negotiation, part of your negotiation might be, hey, I'm the best candidate. You really want me. I'm either going to bring in higher salary in that range, i.e. you're actually in the range of the other job, right? So if it's scientist and senior scientist, and you're at the upper end of scientist, you're going to be at the lower end of senior scientist in your job. So you may only wind up being in scientist for a year before promoting. Normal promotion time is between 2 and 3 years. So if you take a step into a role that's too junior for you, but you're at the upper end of it, you're going to promote quickly, and you're going to be into the next job, which is going to come with another raise. So sometimes you have to strategically think about that. It is possible to negotiate the title as part of your package. Well, I am actually more appropriate as a senior scientist than a scientist. You know, again, thinking about those job ranges, right? They overlap. If they're talking about something in that low end of the senior because you're new to industry, let's say, or upper of scientist because you've got the experience, but you're still new to industry. You know, one way or the other, right? You're probably talking about the same thing, but your title might be different. It gives you more room to, you know, launch. So they might be willing to give you the higher title. I've seen that happen. A lot of times you'll go out and you'll see jobs and they'll say senior/scientist, and they're looking for whatever they can get, and they'll take the best candidate that fits what they need, right? They have this core tasks that they need to get done. They could take a senior or they could take a regular scientist, and they're flexible. Sometimes they post that because they're actually fishing for multiple people. And it's cheap to put one job ad, and then you get a whole bunch of candidates and you actually hire 5 people out of one job ad, right? So there's lots of different reasons why you would see those kinds of things. Understanding whether you're at the right level. So if you were applying to a title at a smaller company or startup or smaller organization, and you didn't think they were going to be able to push you to that higher job title, even if the salary was the same, might not be the right place to apply, right? You might want to wait until you found the right higher level job title that fits the right thing. Now, the other thing I often see is the requirement is master's and the preferred is PhD, in which case I will tell you across the board, institutions, organizations, companies prefer to hire preferred. They actually don't want to hire the minimums. So in that case, then you're absolutely in the right job title and you should apply, even though it says master's and required, because the preferred is PhD. So you have to read the whole thing. Question number 2 from this person was, there are 3 to 4 interesting jobs in one industry, and then is it a good idea to apply for multiple positions? So you must be talking about one organization or one company. I would apply to the first one that you think is the most interesting, and then pay attention to, are they all in the same group or are they in different groups? Because if they're in different groups at the same company, let's say Pfizer, and there's 3 different scientists, 4 different scientist roles, and they're all in different groups, but you have skills that apply to all of them in different ways, apply to the ones that you want to apply to. There's nothing that says you can't apply to multiple positions. If you apply to 4 positions in one group, that sends a different message, right? Because that can come across as desperate, right? And you don't want to look like you're desperate, but it could also come across as very, very, very interested, in which case I would say apply to one of them, find some network connection to that space and talk to someone in that team so that they know how excited you are about that work and how willing you are to take any of the 4 roles, because they're all very similar. And again, it could be that they're hiring 4 jobs and they scientist, and they're all doing a little bit different stuff, but all in the same group and all in the same thing. Wow, that's really hard because that's expensive. And frankly, a company would be silly to do that. But, you know, you wouldn't want to apply to the associate scientist, the senior scientist, and the principal scientist, if those were the 4 positions that were, because you're clearly overqualified for 2 of them. Your sweet spot might be scientist or senior scientist, and principal scientist might be a reach. In which case, you know, you really, really want to talk to someone who's in that group and make the connection and have that, you know, face to face. On paper, it's very easy to turn people down. It's harder when you start putting faces with it. And so whenever you get the chance to tell your story in 3 dimensions, I encourage you to do that. It really does make a difference. So I'm going to hold on the last question in the chat. And Priyanka, I know you've had your hand up for a while, so I'm going to flip back and invite you to chat, and then we'll get back to the one that's in chat.
Actually, so my question is slightly specific, but it also relates a bit to the last question. So I have an opportunity to, because I will be finishing my postdoc and I do want to transition to industry, but I do have an opportunity to stay a bit longer until I find something, or I have to stay for about 2 years because my boss would probably offer me a position that is paid by a company. So it's a company contract. The thing is, I can't make up my mind at the moment as to which would jeopardize my chances of transitioning, because if I stay for 2 years, it means I am a postdoc, or the title would be slightly different, and I would still be in the academic setting. So,
but it's a company contract, so that's industry experience, and I would absolutely on your resume talk about that as industry experience.
I mean, I wouldn't be working in the industry. I would still be working where I am right now, because we are going to be, for example, let's say testing their molecules. Obviously, there will be a lot of back and forth with discussions and so on, but I would still be working in an academic setting. So,
but you're going to be working on, okay, so I encounter this all the time. So you are just like every one of your peers who has these questions, which hopefully is comforting, right? I'm not trying to tell you, I want you to take comfort in that.
Yeah.
Shift your thinking, okay? Because industry timelines are very different, right? So you're going to be working faster. That's good, because you can talk about working on an industry's timeline instead of an academic timeline. So when you shift, that's one of the questions you'll get is, can you work fast enough, right? Do you have this academic mindset of, I'm going to work on this thing forever until I get to the very, very end, and I've had so many no's that I finally know that it's not going to go anywhere. That's not how industry operates, right? You're going to understand more about the internal pieces and the language that is used in pharma, biotech, whatever, right? GMP, PMP. I'm going to, I can throw a whole lot of acronyms at you that we don't use in academic science, right? Because they are, or GCP, I guess. It depends on what you're working on, right? So good, I will say good clinical practice, good manufacturing practice, PMP, project management, right? So as you're, thinking about the, we do QA over here, we do QA, QC, quality, right? So you want to be able to position yourself. So yes, I've been working at an academic institution, but my function, right, my skill set goes beyond that, right? Because you're managing, directing, developing something, project, examining, testing, evaluating. That's a good one. Again, active verb, right? Plus your skill set. and the experiences, right? To establish these things for an industry partner. And you may or may not be able to name them, depending on the work, depending on how fast the work gets done. If it's, pushed through all the right company level patent, et cetera, right? Stuff. But that puts you in a different type of position where you're talking about, moving things to patent manufacture or, whatever. So yes, you'd be in an academic lab, but you're not doing academic work. It's just not the same mindset. So, so here's where I would say do some research, right? You're finishing your job or you're finishing your current role. And it sounds like you have two opportunities. One is, stay in that sort of academic role, but, flexible work until you find something, or you sign on to this 2-year project. Right now is a great time to, think about, well, what do I really want to get to? And what does it take to get there? If you're looking at jobs that say 2 years of industry experience, that job, that 2-year contract with a company might be exactly what you want, right? To say, I have 2 years of experience working with industry because that's it, right? If you find roles in your life and they're flexible, and a lot of them are, right? And those are the ones that you want to go after. Well, then maybe that flexible space might be the thing to take. Again, it's temporary, right? Your PI's already, or your mentor's already, said that it's temporary and whatnot. So, where some of those are choices that have to be made, and you want to be strategic about that thinking. So talking to people and understanding, what does it take to get to here? What, doing informational interviews to say, my 2 favorite questions. I don't think we have informational interviews on the docket right now. The lecture's recorded. So if you need it, go look. But my 2 favorite questions are, with the background and everything that you're doing right now, like what in your training was really useful to set you up for success now, right? If you're not already doing it or you don't have it, that's something for you to gain and learn right now. Great. And then the second question, which is the mirror of that, is what do you wish you learned, right? So they didn't have it, but they use it every day, right? And you'll get that data. So that data also tells you, do I already have that? Yes, no. Right? I can learn it, right? You can add that skill set. So if you're in something type of role and they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had an experience. Well, okay. You might want to do that 2-year experience. If what they said was, oh, I really needed a PMP certificate. Okay. Maybe you want to start taking the training for PMP. Don't pay for the certificate. Let your company pay for the certificate, by the way, the test, right? But if it's something and they say, oh, I wish I had learned this, and you're like, I already know that. Let's go, right? Great. So all those things are useful. And hopefully that helps you sort of start to think through that process. I don't want to say think through, start to think through that process, because I think there's homework, there's conversations that can be had in that space to help make those decisions. Okay. No, absolutely. So I'm going to get to the next question. Does overstaying in academics make the transition difficult? I was a postdoc for 4 years, a staff scientist for 1 year, and an assistant professor for 2 years, running an independent lab. So if you want to shift into a non-faculty role, absolutely. In fact, there was just recently an article on mid-career, so not even assistant professors, but associate professors who are fleeing academia into all kinds of other roles. What that does actually is it sets up a couple of things. One is, yes, you can transition whenever you want. That's a choice, right? You always have a choice. You can go from academics to industry. If you want to go from industry back to academics, you have to make a good case, and you have to have the right people around you to support you. So you have to have a good mentoring network, but it's possible. Used to be less possible than it is today. But coming back from industry, especially to, with, again, ideas and whatnot from that experience, especially if you're stepping into a role where the academic institution is looking to capitalize on intellectual property, right? Lots and lots of that's happening now. There's more and more universities with patent offices, tech transfer offices, IP, licensing, commercialization. So if you're in a space and you want to shift to something that's like that, or if you wanted to go back and teach or do something completely different, happens all the time. So there's those pieces. So let me get back to the rest of it. So what happens with that exodus of our associate professors is it gives room for our assistant professor to promote, gives room for our graduate students and postdocs to shift into academic assistant professor level positions. That's not bad, right? So again, everyone's choosing to do the thing that they're really passionate about, also not bad. It's, you know, there's certain ways to think of this and opportunities and whatnot. Now, why are they all jumping ship? Well, maybe the environment is not good. Okay, well, maybe that's not the place you want to look. But all of those are choices, and we can think about all of those things. So I would say overstaying in academia is just the choices that you've made up to now. They're the opportunities that you've had up to now. You can talk about them as opportunities. You can talk about them as learning experiences, as growth, and all of the things, again, skill set focus, not academic achievement focus. So it's really a shift in thinking to get to those skills that the companies or organizations. So I say companies, and I've talked a lot about industry, but I also want to add in nonprofits, government opportunities. There are government labs, there are government science policy. I'm going to flip to nonprofit, but also, and even in companies, there's science writing, medical writing, medical science liaison, field application scientists, as another, you know, sort of group of individuals. There's sales if you wanted to do that. There are lots of different opportunities. Last week, business development. Raghu gave a great talk about business development and what he's done to position himself in that space. So there's lots of different ways to take your science and leverage it to do something that you really enjoy. In academics, in industry, in government, and nonprofits are two other major sectors. But let's say you wanted to go work for a professional society. Fantastic. That's also possible. So I don't think that you've overstayed. I think that you've taken career steps up to now. And if you want to shift the direction of that, then you shift direction, right? And it's all about how you tell your story, and we'll work through some of those pieces. Rohini, I see your question next in the chat, and I don't see other hands, so I'm going to go ahead and take this one. Stuck trying to build an industry resume from my academic CV. Well, I understand a resume should be tailored to the job. How do you build a master resume? So we absolutely have a session planned on resumes. So if you can sit tight, that's good. If you're in a hurry, I would grab the last copy of, you know, the resume lecture and watch that through. And, you know, when you have time to chat, it's not exactly opening the 2 Word documents and taking everything from your CV and just moving it over and shifting it around. It's different because your CV is historical. It's a multi-page document. It's all the details about everything down to, you know, the page number, right, of a journal article. Your resume, I want to have you think about it as forward thinking, right? So you're taking the skills that you've gained, right? But you're only talking about the ones that are relevant to the job that you're looking for in the future, right? So the next thing, it's taking your experiences and your impact and your metrics, again, your history, but it's skill focused. This is achievement focused, right? So they're just 2 very different documents. Your name at the top of the page is the same. That's about it. So, you know, your structure for, you know, what you put on an academic CV could probably be, you know, your university. So degree, university. No, actually, let me back up. Degree, field of specialty, university, years of attendance are common between both documents. That's really all you need. Oh, and like if you were summa cum laude, magna, whatever, cum laude, or if you had some honors and you wanted to put that, okay, that's resume. That plus you might put your GPA, you might put other test scores, you might put your thesis or your dissertation title, you might put your mentor on this CV document. Very different. None of that goes on your resume. So your GPA, no names, no mentors, none of that. Because when you put that, it's an invitation for someone to reach out and talk to that person. If they're a reference for you, and that's great, and you have a positive relationship, fantastic. But you want to talk to those people first. You don't want them to reach out and talk to everyone who has a name, who's named on your resume before you've had the chance to interview. You want to wow them with, hey, I'm super excited about your job with this. And you know, I'm a great candidate because you need this and I have this, and this is how they connect, right? And you tell that story. If they go and ask questions, they might not get your story and that connection and why you care about working for that group. What they're going to get is, oh, this person is great at this thing. And that's the slice that they know about your broader experience, right? And if it doesn't fit, because you're leveraging different pieces of your experience to go for a role that fits with your interests going forward, that feeds your soul, right? Like what you're doing right now probably feeds part of your soul, but like not all of it is where you're at, passionate, right? Like there's always something in our job that we're like, I will be glad to not do that anymore. So think about, you know, what's in that, you know, big picture. You know, what pieces are you taking forward? What are you leaving behind? And I say leaving behind, but you know, you never really lose any of that. So let's say you took half of the job that you're doing right now and you push it forward into your next career step. And then you have an opportunity that actually leverages the other half and you're like, oh my gosh, this would be so fantastic. And you take that step. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can take that step. We don't lose skill set as we're moving forward. That said, your pipette skills might get a little rusty, right? Or, you know, something like if you left something behind, it's going to get rusty, but it's going to come right back. You know, these are not the things that, you know, you don't lose it forever. You don't lose the ability to know how to do research if you go to the dark side of industry. That's just not academic research. It's just not how that happens. So I hope that helps and hopes gives some perspective. The resume lecture is coming, but it's just not next week.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I realized I'm skipping ahead and I'm not.
That's okay. No, I love the excitement. But I also know that I can't talk about all of the pieces in Absolutely. Like, well, I could do it in one whole day. Like if we just started at 8 a.m. and went all the way until 8 p.m., we could probably get through all of it, but we would all be really, really tired. And then you still have to go and do it, right? So we can talk about it, but I like breaking it out into pieces. And we do resumes and interviews. We're doing every 3 times a year for the three cohorts. So you take it now. And if you're like, if you use it, great. If someone's like in the space where they're still doing, career exploration and they haven't gotten to the job search stuff, that's okay. Join in with the next cohort and watch the, interact in that space again, hear the lecture again. You're going to be like, oh yeah, she said that last time. Yep. She said that last time. Oh, did she say that last time? I don't know. Well, that's relevant to me. So write it down. Right. So, we all hear things at different points. We'll remember some of it. We're going to forget some of it. Pick up the pieces as you need them, which is why I say you have a history of recorded stuff. We've got stuff current going forward, and then there's stuff in the future that's all going to be all accessible all the time. So, but yes, definitely, we will work through that. there's, members in the group that are helpful and useful for that. And then don't forget, all of you are at organizations that have stuff on campus. And I do want to remind you, I'm at USF. I help all my USF students, grad students and postdocs, but I would still encourage them to come in here, because I, as one mentor, am one mentor. Your current PI mentor is one mentor. Have lots of mentors around you. So that's one of the reasons why I love this group, is it really brings you into a warm, welcoming space that, lots of people willing to share lots of experiences, and some of it's relevant, some of it's not, and, pick and choose what you need to hear and what you need to access. But you can do that when you're in control of your career. So I want to empower everyone. Okay, so we're getting a little over time. So someone asked about the recording. So that was shared. Someone wants to discuss academic careers, pros and cons. Yes, so make sure you post that also in the full group. And again, I'm glad that we're starting to have some of these conversations in this cohort, but also, projecting into the group, because it's, it really is a space for you to ask the questions. There are no stupid questions. There are, you might hear me say, oh yeah, I've heard that question a lot. That's not to take away from the validity of your question. It's just to help you understand this is normal. It's completely normal. No one has ever trained you to consider your career and to get your next job. It's just not part of our training. And so that's one of the best reasons why I think that this is really fantastic. So I suppose to a small extent, current PIs teach you how to be a future PI because that's what they know. That's the one career path that they know. And they'll teach you how to write a CV. And, if you have another mentor, they're going to teach you slightly different. But no one single mentor can teach everything. So if they're great at presentations, they may or may not be great at writing a paper. If they're great at writing a paper, they may or may not be, they may or may not be in the lab with you every day. They might be not be doing work in tandem with you. Some of your PIs are that, right? And some of that feels micromanaging. So that, sometimes you have too much input, sometimes not enough input. So, you're learning as you go, and there's all kinds of good experiences in this space that will help you push forward. But pay attention to all the people around you as potential mentors. And again, they don't have to be long-term. They can be very short-term. How do you always write an amazing abstract in like the afternoon that it's due? Learn that skill from someone, get the tips, tricks, and whatnot, and grab that. So yes, Shiva, thank you so much. This will be available after, and as soon as I hit stop on recording. So with that, I don't see any more hands or questions. So I'm going to hit stop on the recording.